Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The night was restless in the riverlands. Wind hissed through the blackened trees, carrying the scent of ash and horse sweat and the distant crackle of dying fires. Villages once bright with hearthlight now crouched in ruin, their thatch roofs fallen, their wells fouled. In that land of smoke and sorrow, men spoke the name of one who would not die. Beric Dondarrion. Once he had been a lord of Blackhaven, young, gallant, and laughing beneath banners of purple lightning. He had ridden from King's Landing in shining mail, charged by Eddard Stark himself to bring the mountain to justice. But that had been a lifetime ago, or perhaps several lifetimes. Now, as he stood beside the embers of a campfire, deep in the hollow of the High Heart, Lord Beric's armor was dented and blackened, his cloak tattered by wind and rain. His face bore the ruin of fire, one eye gone, one ear half burned away, his beard streaked with ash. Yet his sword glowed faintly red in the dark, and his men still followed him. Around the fire, the Brotherhood without banners murmured low. A ragged dozen remained of what had once been a proud company. Thoros of Myr, with his wine-stained robes and weary eyes, Ongi the archer, lean as his own arrows, Lem Lemoncloak, swearing softly as he mended his torn boot, and Tom of Seven Streams, strumming his lute without joy. "Word from the west," Ongi said, flicking a coal from his sleeve. "A Lannister convoy rides from Harrenhal. Heavy guard, slow wagons. Gold, they say. Enough to pay a sellsword army." At this, heads turned. Even the fire seemed to listen. "Gold?" Lem muttered. "Tywin's blood runs yellow as piss, so that sounds right enough." Thoros of Myr looked across the flames at Beric. "We've heard such tales before. Last time, it was a trap. The men of the mountain near cut us in half." Beric's remaining eye glimmered in the firelight. "Aye, yet gold buys swords, and swords spill blood. Every coin that reaches Tywin's coffers is another blade turned upon the innocent. If we can strike at his purse, we must." Lem spat into the flames. "Strike at his purse, aye, if there's truly gold to be had. But if it's another trick..." Tom strummed a single mournful note. "Then we'll sing of it, Lem, as we always do." A faint smile crossed Beric's scarred lips. "We move at dawn, but quietly. No torches, no banners. Let the woods hide us." The fire dwindled to embers. When the first light touched the mist, the Brotherhood rode out. Their horses were lean, their mail patched with leather and rust, but they rode with purpose. The riverlands stretched before them, a scarred country of burned farms and broken bridges, where every tree seemed to whisper of loss. Beric rode at their head, his sword bound in rags, his thoughts turned inward. He could scarcely remember his home now, the hall at Blackhaven, the laughter of his betrothed, the sound of rain on slate roofs. Death had taken those memories piece by piece. Each time Thoros had called him back, he had returned less than before, hollowed out, like a candle burning from within. As they neared the crossroads, a scout came galloping back. "Tracks ahead, my lord. Heavy wagons, iron-shod, 20 men at least." Beric raised his hand, and the riders halted among the trees. He dismounted, knelt in the mud, and traced the tracks with his gloved fingers. The ruts were deep, the prints fresh, less than a day old. "Eastward," he murmured, "toward Leicester's lands. If they mean to cross the Trident, they'll take the old bridge. Thoros frowned. Beric, are you certain of this? I am, he said. His voice was quiet, almost distant. Every life they take feeds this war. Every village they burn feeds the mountain's pride. We'll end one fire before it spreads. The Brotherhood moved like shadows through the forest. Rain began to fall, a soft, steady curtain that muffled their passage. They skirted the road, keeping to the hollows until the rumble of wheels reached them through the mist. Beric raised his hand again. The men crouched low, peering through the dripping branches. There, through the rain, came the convoy. 6 wagons, iron-bound and heavy-laden, flanked by mounted guards in crimson cloaks. Their helms were bright beneath the gray sky, their swords sharp. At their head rode a knight in gilded plate, his lion sigil black with wet. Lannisters, sure enough. Ongai drew his bowstring to his ear. "One word, my lord," he whispered. Beric's single eye watched the wagons pass and narrowed. Something was wrong. The wagons bore no sound of clinking coin, no glitter of gold beneath the canvas. From within came only the muffled sobs of voices, human voices. "Hold," Beric murmured. Thoros stepped forward beside him. "What is it?" "Listen," Beric said softly. "Do you hear it?" A cry broke from one of the wagons, faint, terrified, a child's voice. "Seven, save us," Thoros breathed. The sound carried through the trees, raw and desperate. The Brotherhood looked to Beric. He drew his sword, and the dull rain turned to steam where it touched the blade. "Not gold," he said grimly. "Prisoners." The fire of his sword burned brighter in the gloom. "Mount up," Beric said. "We ride to free them." And in the next breath, the storm began. Rain fell harder as dusk deepened, drumming softly upon the leaves like the distant roll of drums before battle. The Brotherhood without banners moved through the forest in silence, their horses' hooves sinking into the wet earth. Beric Dondarrion led them beneath dripping branches, his sword still faintly aglow beneath its wrappings. The light shone like a dying ember, the last warmth before the cold of night. They rode parallel to the road for a mile, keeping to shadow and thicket until Beric raised his arm for halt. From the ridge above, they could see the Lannister convoy halted beside the bridge that spanned a narrow gorge. Torches burned along the wagons, their flames wavering in the wind. Crimson-cloaked guards stood watch while their captain, the knight in gilded armor, shouted orders. 6 wagons, murmured Ongi. More than 20 men, too many for a straight charge. Beric's one eye studied the scene with grim patience. The gorge below was steep but narrow, the bridge old and slick with rain. "They'll make camp before crossing," he said. "We'll strike after dark. Ongai, take 3 men and circle east. Lem, you and Tom with me. Thoros, be ready with the fire." Thoros gave a weary nod. As always, his voice held no joy. The priest of Myr had seen too many nights like this, too many dead men called back from darkness. By the time the moon rose pale and broken behind the clouds, the Lannisters had built their camp. A small fire burned beneath the shelter of a tilted wagon. The guards hunched close to its warmth. From another wagon came the soft cries of those imprisoned within, muffled, frightened sounds that pricked the ears like thorns. Beric crept closer through the wet grass, Lem and Tom beside him. The rain had thinned to a mist. He could see the captain now, his helm off, his blonde hair catching the firelight as he shared bread and wine with his men. His laughter rang harsh in the night. "Take the 2 nearest sentries," Beric whispered. "No sound." Lem's dagger flashed once, twice, quick as breath. The men fell without a cry. Ongai's arrow hissed through the dark and pinned another to a tree. Then silence again, save for the soft murmur of rain. Beric drew his sword, unbinding the wrappings. The blade flared to life, a line of red fire against the black. "For the small folk," he said softly. "For the innocent." And then they struck. The first cry rose as the firelight flared. Arrows streaked from the trees, cutting down guards before they could rise. Beric's men poured from the woods, shouting their battle cries. Steel clashed on steel, and the camp erupted into chaos. Beric met the gilded captain head-on in the center of the road. The man swung his longsword with trained precision, his armor gleaming even beneath the soot and rain. "Outlaws!" the knight spat. "You dare raise steel against lions?" Beric parried and struck back, sparks flying from the clash. "We raise steel against butchers," he said, "and you, sir, are one of them." Their blades sang in the storm. The knight was strong, younger perhaps, but Beric's arm was steady, driven by the fire that would not die. He feinted low, then brought his burning sword down hard. The knight's blade shattered, and the light of Beric's strike filled the rain with flame. When it cleared, the captain lay dying in the mud, his gold armor blackened. "Mercy," the man gasped, clutching at the wound in his throat. "Mercy, for the love of the Seven." Beric stood over him a moment, rain hissing upon his blade. "The Seven were not with the ones you chained," he said, and drove his sword into the ground beside him. The fire sputtered and died. The battle was over within moments. The surviving Lannister guards fled into the woods, leaving their dead behind. The wagons stood silent, the prisoners within crying softly. Lem wrenched open the first door. Inside were men, women, even children, thin and filthy, their wrists bound with cord. Their eyes shone wide with fear until they saw Thoros approach, torch in hand. "You're free now," the priest said gently. "Come out, all of you." They stumbled into the rain, blinking against the light. One little girl clutched a wooden doll, broken in half. Another woman fell to her knees before Beric. "Who are you, sir?" she asked. "Are you one of Stark's men?" Beric looked down at her, his face shadowed beneath his helm. Once, perhaps. No longer. As the freed captives gathered, Tom of Seven Streams stood watching the dark tree line. His lute hung silent at his back. "Strange," he said softly. "No horns, no pursuit." Beric turned to him. "What do you mean?" "The Lannisters never travel alone," Tom murmured. "Someone should have come running at the sound of steel." Ongai approached from the ridge, his bow slung across his shoulder. "He's right. I saw no outriders, no campfires up the road. It's as if they wanted us to find them." Beric's brow furrowed. "Wanted us?" Before he could speak further, a whistle split the night, then another. Arrows fell from the trees like rain. Lem shouted a warning, dragging a freed man to the ground. A cry rose from one of the Brotherhood, cut short by the shaft that struck his throat. "Ambush!" Ongai roared. "From the west!" Chaos returned in a heartbeat. Flames flared as the wagons caught alight, arrows hissing into the dry canvas. The freed captives screamed and scattered. Beric spun toward Thoros. "Get them clear! Take whoever you can! Run!" The Red Priest hesitated, his torch guttering. "Beric, go!" Beric turned, drawing his sword once more. The blade burst into flame as he faced the dark ridge. Figures moved there, armored men with torches and blackened shields, their banners unseen but their intent plain. A voice rang out over the rain. "Dondarrion, you live still, do you? I told them you were a ghost." Beric's eye narrowed. He knew that voice, knew it too well. "Sir Warwick Frey," he said softly, "so it was your hand behind this." The Frey knight rode forward through the firelight, his grin cruel. You cost my kin dear at the Mummer's Ford. Tonight the debt is paid." He lifted his sword, and his men charged. The Brotherhood met them in the road, steel crashing in the flicker of burning wagons. Beric fought like one already dead, his flaming sword painting red arcs through the storm. Lem's great mace crushed helms, Angi's arrows flew point-blank into armored throats, and Thoros dragged screaming captives into the woods. But the frays were many. Beric cut down 1, 2, 3, but each stroke cost him strength. His arm grew heavy, his breath ragged. He felt the world narrowing, darkness edging his sight. Then he saw Warwick Frey before him, laughing as he drove his sword into Beric's chest. Pain flared, white, bright, then gone. Beric fell to one knee, fire spilling from his sword. The rain hissed louder, washing blood into the mud. He heard Thoros shouting his name. He tried to answer, but no sound came. As the battle faded around him, he saw only the sky, a low, weeping sky, and thought he heard the voice of the woman he once loved, calling from somewhere far beyond. Then the world went dark, and Beric Dondarrion met death once more. Darkness came first, not the gentle dark of sleep, but the heavy, soundless black of death. Beric floated in it, unanchored, weightless, as if the world itself had forgotten his name. No pain, no breath, no sound save for a distant echo, like a heartbeat long gone still. Then came the light, a faint flicker at first, no larger than a candle flame, then stronger, brighter, burning behind his closed eyes until it filled him. It was warmth and agony all at once, a searing fire that dragged him from the void. He gasped, choking on air and rain, and his heart gave a violent lurch within his chest. When sight returned, Beric saw a face leaning over him, red hair plastered to a pale brow, eyes filled with both faith and weariness. Thoros of Myr knelt beside him, soaked to the bone, his hands pressed against Beric's chest. The priest's lips still moved, whispering in the tongue of his faith. Around them, the rain hissed upon dying fires, and the scent of smoke hung thick in the air. "Thoros," Beric rasped, his voice rough as gravel. The priest sat back on his heels, exhaustion etched deep into his face. "You would not stay dead, my lord. The Lord of Light has use for you still." Beric struggled to rise. His body felt foreign, heavy, stiff, his limbs trembling. He looked down and saw the hole where Warwick Frey's sword had pierced him, a jagged scar still smoking faintly, as if the wound remembered the fire that closed it. Around them, the aftermath of battle lay scattered. The ground was strewn with corpses, Freys and Brotherhood alike. Rain drummed on dented helms and blood-slick mail. The wagons were blackened husks, their wheels still smoldering. "Who lives?" Beric asked. "Fewer than half," Thoros said quietly. "Ongai is hurt, but breathes. Lem too. Tom is gone." His voice wavered slightly. The Freys took the survivors they could, some of the freed captives as well. They fled north toward the Green Fork. Beric's jaw tightened. "Then we ride." "You can barely stand," Thoros protested. "You died, Beric. You've been gone hours." "Then I've slept enough," Beric said grimly. He pulled himself to his feet, swaying but steady. His hair hung lank with rain, his burned face streaked with mud. "Each time grows shorter, priest. Each time I return with less. If I still have breath, I will use it." Thoros met his gaze for a long moment. "You are not the same man I once knew, nor the one who left King's Landing." "No," Beric said softly. "He died a long time ago." They gathered what remained of the Brotherhood and buried their fallen beneath the weirwood roots nearby. The red leaves glistened with rain, their branches whispering in the wind. Beric stood beside the graves until the last mound of earth was smoothed, his hand resting upon his sword. "Sing for them, Tom." Lem muttered under his breath, staring into the trees. "Sing for us all." By dawn, they were in the saddle again. The trail of the Freys wound north through a tangle of woods and broken fields. Hoofprints and cart ruts marked their passage, and once or twice they found the bodies of small folk slain along the road, proof enough that Warwick Frey had taken prisoners. Beric's anger burned cold and steady. He rode without rest, without complaint, the rhythm of the horse beneath him, the only sound he cared to hear. The men followed, grim and silent. Even Thoros did not speak. By midday, they reached a shallow ford where the green fork widened into slow, murky water. There, amid the reeds, they found one of the captured wagons overturned, its horses gone. Lem dismounted and crouched beside it. "Tracks lead that way," he said, pointing east. "But look here." He tugged aside a torn canvas cover. Beneath it lay a corpse, one of the captives, a boy no older than 12, his hands bound, an arrow through his back. Thoros knelt beside the child, whispering a prayer. Beric only watched, his one eye dark beneath his brow. "Mercy is a stranger in these lands," he murmured. "We'll find them and end this." They followed the trail through the forest until dusk. The air grew colder, the trees closer together, their branches clawing at the gray sky. When they finally saw firelight ahead, they dismounted and crept forward on foot. A small camp stood beside the riverbank. 5 wagons, a score of Frey men-at-arms, and the same black banner bearing twin silver towers. Beric's gaze swept the camp. Near the fire sat Warwick Frey, armor unfastened, his face ruddy from drink. The captives were huddled nearby, chained and shivering. Angai touched Beric's arm. "We could take them, my lord, if we strike swift." Beric studied the ground. "No, not yet." "What do you mean?" Lem hissed. "We've chased these bastards a day and a night." Beric raised a hand. "Look closer." Beyond the camp, hidden poorly among the reeds, lay 2 more tents, and men in black cloaks moving between them. They bore no Frey sigils, no house colors. Their armor was dull, unmarked. Sellswords, perhaps, but Beric knew such secrecy meant one thing only. "This isn't a Frey camp alone," he said quietly. "They've joined hands with others. Someone's paying them to hunt us." Thoros frowned. "Who would pay such men for outlaws? We have nothing." "Nothing," Beric agreed, "save a name." He watched as one of the cloaked men stepped into the light, speaking with Warwick Frey. His voice carried faintly over the water. "The bounty will be double if you bring the Dondarrion alive," the man said. "The Lannisters want his head for proof, but their red priest will fetch his weight in gold." Lem cursed under his breath. "So that's the game." Beric's eye gleamed like dying coal. "Then let us change the rules." He withdrew into the trees, his voice low but firm. "Thoros, circle west with the wounded. Wait for my signal. Fire on the far bank. Lem, Angi, with me. We end this tonight." When the first star broke through the clouds, Beric moved. They slipped from the forest, silent as wraiths, blades drawn. The Freys laughed and drank, unaware of the shapes that crept closer through the dark. Beric reached the first guard and struck without sound, the man falling before he could breathe his last. Another step, another life. Then they were among them. Steel rang. Arrows flew. The sellswords shouted, scrambling for their weapons as flames leapt suddenly high, Thoros's fire catching on the tarred wagons. The night became chaos once more. Beric sought only Warwick Frey. He found him near the fire, sword drawn, face twisted with fear and fury. "You again!" Warwick spat. "How many times must you die before you stay dead?" Beric's sword ignited, flame coiling along the blade. "As many times as it takes." Their swords met with a shower of sparks. Warwick fought like a man cornered, fast and wild. But Beric was relentless. Their duel carried them to the riverbank, boots slipping in the mud. Beric's strength faltered for a moment, his heart stuttering, his breath thin. But he pressed on. Warwick lunged, blade grazing Beric's shoulder. "You're no man," he hissed. "You're a ghost in armor." Beric's next blow broke his guard. The firelight flashed once, then faded. Warwick fell to his knees, the water rising red around him. "I was a man once," Beric said quietly. "And I will be again, when this work is done." He turned to the captives, breaking their chains one by one. The survivors wept, some clutching his hand, others too stunned to move. Behind him, Thoros' men drove the remaining sellswords into the woods. The camp was theirs, though the cost was steep. Another brother dead, 2 wounded beyond healing. As the last flames died, Beric looked to Thoros. "Burn the dead," he said softly. "We move before dawn. There will be others hunting us now." Thoros studied him through the smoke. "And what of you, Beric? Each death takes more from you. Will you keep chasing them until nothing remains?" Beric's one eye flickered toward the river, where the black water carried away the Frey's lifeless form. "What remains is enough." He turned toward the woods, cloak torn, sword dim once more. The night closed around him, and the fire behind threw his shadow long upon the trees, the shadow of a man who had died too many times to count, yet still would not yield. Dawn came slowly to the riverlands, pale and uncertain through the mist that clung to the trees. The smoke from the burned Frey camp still drifted over the river, curling into the gray sky like the last breath of a dying fire. The Brotherhood without banners moved quietly through the ruins, their faces drawn, their eyes hollow from another night of blood. Beric Dondarrion stood upon the riverbank, cloak hanging heavy with rain, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The flame of the blade had long since gone out, leaving only a blackened edge. Around him, the freed captives huddled close to the smoldering wagons, whispering prayers or sobbing softly. He watched them without expression. Once, he might have knelt among them, offered comfort or a promise of safety. But that part of him, the bright young lord of Blackhaven, had died with the first sword that pierced his heart. What remained was a man bound to fire and duty, no longer living yet not at peace. Lem came to stand beside him, his yellow cloak darkened to brown with mud and soot. "We lost 6 more in the night," he said gruffly. 3 too wounded to ride. Thoros says he'll stay with them till they can move. Beric nodded slowly. "And the small folk?" "Scattered," Lem said. "A few went south toward salt pans, some west. Can't blame them. The wars burned the heart out of this land." Beric's gaze drifted eastward, where the first light broke through the trees. "Then we've done what we could. For now." Ongai approached, bow slung across his shoulder. "There's talk in every hamlet we pass. Word of your name rides ahead of us, my lord. Some call you savior, others ghost." Beric gave a weary half-smile. "Perhaps both are true." Ongui spat into the mud. Well, I'd rather they saw you as a man. Ghosts don't eat, and I've had naught but half a crust since yesterday." Lem snorted. "You'd eat a saddle if it didn't have hair." Their banter was weary, an old habit that clung to life like the last coals in a hearth. Beric let it wash over him, saying nothing. His mind was already turning to what lay ahead. The Frey's ambush had not been a mere act of vengeance. It had been orchestrated, planned by hands with gold and purpose. The Lannisters' reach stretched far, and he knew that every strike he made against them would draw more blades in return. Yet he also knew the cause. The dream that had bound them all once beneath the trees of the hollow hill was slipping away. The War of Kings had turned every ideal to ash. Thoros returned at midday, his red robes torn and blackened from smoke. His beard was streaked with gray that had not been there before. "The wounded are buried," he said. The rest have gone to the winds. The Lord of Light take them." Beric inclined his head. "And what does your lord say of us, Thoros? Have his flames shown you where our road ends?" Thoros met his gaze, weary eyes full of doubt. "Once I thought I knew. Now I am less certain. The fires burn low, Beric. Perhaps the Lord's favor cools. Or perhaps it is spent upon you alone." Beric turned away, his face unreadable. "If his will keeps me walking, then I will walk." That night they camped among the ruins of an old sept. Its walls had been shattered by catapult stones, its 7-pointed star broken, the altar cracked in two. Still, it was shelter, and the Brotherhood built a small fire within the nave, the light flickering against the scorched walls. Lem dozed against a pillar, Ongai cleaned his arrows, and Thoros sat cross-legged before the flames, lips moving silently. Beric stood at the broken doorway, staring out into the darkness where rain whispered upon the grass. He thought of the faces of those who had died for him, or because of him. Ned Dane, the boy who had once called him brother, Tom of Seven Streams, whose songs had carried laughter into the hollow hills, even the nameless small folk who had looked upon his scarred face and seen hope, all gone, save for him, and each time he rose again, more of their memory seemed to fade. The wind shifted, carrying a scent of wood smoke, not their own. Beric's head lifted sharply. "Fire," he murmured, "to the south." Ongi rose at once. "Could be raiders. Could be worse," said Lem, already buckling on his sword. Within moments they were mounted, riding through the wet dark. The smell grew stronger, smoke, thick and sharp, mixed with the iron tang of blood. They crested a low hill, and the sight below froze them in their saddles. A village burned. Thatched roofs collapsed in showers of sparks, the air filled with the shrieks of livestock and the wails of the dying. Men in mail moved among the flames, torches in hand, driving the small folk into the street. Beric's jaw clenched. The mountains work. But as they drew closer, Ongi shook his head. "No lion banners. See there, the flayed man." The banner of House Bolton fluttered above the inferno, crimson upon pink. Beric felt cold despite the firelight. "Boltons," he said softly. Northmen turned south, with knives in their hands. They spurred their horses down the slope. The first Bolton soldier never saw them coming. Beric's blade took him at the throat, the fire upon its searing flesh as easily as parchment. Lem smashed another from his horse. Ongai loosed arrow after arrow, and Thoros's torch flared brighter than the burning houses. The fight was short, but brutal. The Boltons broke and fled, leaving the dead scattered among the flames. Beric dismounted beside a dying man, whose cloak bore the flayed sigil. The soldier tried to speak, but blood bubbled from his mouth. "Who sent you?" Beric demanded. The man's eyes rolled white. "Orders from the Dreadfort to hunt the Brotherhood, kill the ghost." His breath rattled and stilled. Lem spat into the dirt. "They hunt us from the north now. What next? The Seven themselves?" Beric rose, the glow of his sword dying to embers. "We've become a curse upon their tongues," he said quietly. "The lords of this realm see us as vermin, to be driven out and slain." Thoros approached, his eyes reflecting the fire. "And yet, you keep returning to them." Beric looked back toward the burning village. "Someone must. else they will burn it all. They found survivors, a few huddled beneath the ruins of a barn, clutching each other. A mother with a babe, an old man with one leg, a boy no older than 10, staring at them with hollow eyes. "Please," the woman whispered, "will you take us away from here?" Beric hesitated. He could feel Thoris's gaze upon him, waiting for his answer. Finally, he said, "We can take you as far as the Trident. Beyond that, the gods alone know." The woman wept with relief. As the night waned, the Brotherhood helped what few could walk. The rest they buried in shallow graves by the road, marked only by stones. The sky above was gray, the air heavy with ash. When all was done, Thoros came to stand beside Beric once more. "You fight every shadow that rises before you," he said, "but you cannot fight death itself." Beric's single eye glimmered faintly. "I've met death, Thoros, 8 times and counting. He grows tired of me." Thoros gave a hollow laugh. "And yet one day he will not." "Then let him take me," Beric said softly, turning toward the smoke-stained horizon. "When my work is done, not before." The dawn broke fully then, pale and cold, washing the land in a light that felt more like morning than morning. The river whispered nearby, carrying the ashes of the burned village downstream, south, toward wars unending. And as the Brotherhood rode on, their leader's cloak flaring faintly in the wind, it seemed for a moment that the man at their head was not truly of this world at all, but some wandering spirit bound by duty, a knight who had died too many times to find his rest. The road wound through the dying forests of the Riverlands, a path of mud and memory. The trees had lost most of their leaves, their bare limbs black against a pale sky, and each gust of wind brought the faint sound of distant crows. The Brotherhood without banners rode in silence. Even the horses seemed subdued, their breath misting in the cold morning air. Beric Dondarrion led them still, though the color had long since left his face. The scar along his cheek had deepened, the edges pale and waxen. Each time he was brought back, the flame of life within him seemed smaller, fainter. His single eye was now a dull ember, burning low. Behind him rode Thoros of Myr, wrapped in his tattered red robes, the hood drawn over his head. He had not slept in days. The fire within him, once bright with the zeal of R'hllor, was dim as well, smothered by doubt and weariness. He had begun to pray without faith, and he feared his god knew it. The road led them toward the Trident, where rumor said the remnants of the River Lords were gathering again under the banners of Lady Went's vassals. But Beric's course had little to do with lords or banners. He followed word of something else, whispers of a column of men traveling north from Harrenhal, taking prisoners, burning as they went. Men said they bore no sigil, yet fought under the command of a hooded knight with a voice cold as the grave. The Brotherhood found the tracks near midday, horses, many of them, and wagon ruts deep in the clay. Beric dismounted, running his hand across the prints. 2 days ahead, he murmured. They move heavy, not swift. We can reach them before the next moonrise. Angi squatted nearby, frowning. No house marks on the shoes, no banners flown. Whoever they are, they're hiding. Hiding means shame, Lem muttered, or fear. Beric rose. Fear then, and if they hide, it is because they know what hunts them. They pressed on through the afternoon, the light fading fast beneath thickening clouds. The wind carried the smell of damp earth and wood smoke, faint but growing. By dusk, the scent was stronger. Ahead, beyond a ridge, they saw the first glow of fire. The Brotherhood crept forward on foot, spreading through the trees. From the crest, they could see the camp below. 6 wagons, a dozen riders, and a score of men-at-arms gathered round the fire. But what drew Beric's eye was the center of the camp, a gallows hastily built, 3 shapes hanging from its beams. The wind moved them gently, a slow, terrible swaying. Lem swore under his breath. "Small folk, gods have mercy." "Mercy," Beric said softly, "is for the living." He turned to Ongai. "Take your men and circle east. Thoros, light the signal when they're in position." The priest nodded, drawing a small flask of oil from his belt. His hands shook slightly. When the last light of dusk vanished, the night split with the hiss of arrows. Ongai's shafts fell from the trees, striking guards before their shouts could rise. Then the Brotherhood came charging from both flanks, their cries echoing across the clearing. Beric's sword flared to life, a streak of red through the dark. He cut through the first man who barred his path, the flame searing flesh from bone. The air filled with screams and the stink of burning. But this time the enemy did not break. From behind the wagons came riders in blackened mail, faces hidden by steel half-masks. They fought like men possessed, silent and relentless. Their commander rode among them, cloaked and hooded, his blade gleaming like frost. Beric met him in the midst of the firelight. Their swords clashed once, twice, the force of it driving sparks into the air. The hooded man's strength was inhuman, his every strike precise and cold. Beric staggered under the blows, the flame of his sword sputtering. "Who are you?" Beric demanded, parrying another cut. The hooded man said nothing. Only his breathing came, slow and even. Then, as their blades locked, he leaned close enough for Beric to see the glint of his eyes. Pale, dead eyes that reflected no light at all. Beric felt his blood run cold. "You should be dust," he whispered. "I saw you burn." The hooded man's lips twitched, the faintest shadow of a smile. "Fire does not cleanse us all." Before Beric could speak, the man broke the lock and struck hard. The blow sent Beric to one knee. He rolled aside as the enemy's blade carved through the air where his neck had been. Thoros appeared beside him, torch in hand. The flame roared high as he flung it into the wagon behind them, the oil catching at once. Fire leapt skyward, blinding bright. The hooded man turned his head, and in that instant Beric lunged. His sword plunged into the man's chest, flame bursting through the wound. But no cry came, only a low hiss, like steam escaping a cracked forge. The figure staggered once, then straightened. His hood fell back, and Beric saw what remained of the face beneath, a ruin of flesh, seared black, half a skull where once had been a man. "7 save us," Thoros breathed. The creature's eyes burned faintly blue. "No god will claim me," it rasped, and seized Beric by the throat. Pain flared white. Beric's vision blurred. He felt his strength leaving him. But before darkness could take him, Lem's mace came down hard upon the creature's skull. Bone shattered, and the thing fell, unmoving. The rest of the masked riders broke and fled into the woods. The Brotherhood stood panting among the dead, the fire crackling around them. Thoros knelt beside the fallen commander, his expression grim. Not a white, not quite, but touched by the same chill. He looked to Beric. "What manner of evil spreads now in this land?" Beric said nothing. He looked upon the dead man's ruined face and felt a hollow ache within his chest. Not fear, but recognition. Death, in all its forms, had become too familiar. When the dawn came, it revealed only ruin. The gallows still swayed, the corpses blackened by smoke. The Brotherhood buried them beneath a cairn of stones, and Beric placed his sword across the top, the fire along its edge dim and flickering. "May your rest be kinder than mine," he murmured. Thoros came to him as the others packed the camp. "You cannot fight death forever, Beric," he said quietly. "It follows you like a hound. Each battle takes more from you. Flesh, memory, soul. How much of the man you were remains?" Beric looked toward the east, where the river shimmered in the distance. "Enough," he said simply. "Enough to remember what justice means." The priest sighed, drawing his cloak tighter. "And if justice becomes vengeance, then I pray your God will forgive me that too." They mounted again and rode through the mist, the rising sun bleeding weakly through the clouds. The world around them was silent save for the cawing of crows. Behind them, in the ashes of the camp, the body of the hooded man twitched once, just once, as the last ember of fire touched his flesh. Then the blue light in his dead eyes faded at last, and the forest swallowed all sound once more. The next days were gray and restless. The rains returned, soft at first, then cold and endless. The riverlands drowned beneath them. Roads became rivers of mud, fields sank into swamps, and every hollow in the forest filled with stagnant pools that reflected a sky of pewter and sorrow. The Brotherhood without banners pressed onward through that sodden country, their cloaks heavy, their tempers worn thin. The fire of rebellion that had once lit their hearts now smoldered like a dying hearth. Yet still, they followed Beric Dondarrion, the lightning lord who would not die. He rode ahead of them, head bowed against the rain. His burned face was set and silent, his one good eye hollow with thought. He had scarcely spoken since the night they slew the hooded riders. Not even Thoros' muttered prayers, nor Lem's grumbling could stir him to words. At night they camped beneath the trees, huddled close to meager fires. The rain hissed on the embers, and the wind made the branches groan like old bones. The men whispered of the thing Beric had fought, a man not alive, not dead, and yet walking. Some said he had been raised by dark sorcery, others that he was a ghost bound by the same fire that kept Beric himself from the grave. When they asked Thoros what he thought, the priest only said, "There are other powers in this world than Orhalar, and not all burn with light." By the third night, their provisions were gone. The river that marked their path had risen, cutting off the fords to the north. The land itself seemed to drive them east, toward the haunted heart of the Trident, where the war's ashes still lingered. At dusk, they came upon a ruined holdfast, stone walls blackened by fire, half collapsed, its gates hanging from broken hinges. Inside, the courtyard was strewn with the bones of men and horses, long picked clean by crows. "We'll shelter here," Beric said at last. His voice was hoarse as though unused. The men set about building a fire in the old great hall, clearing space among the fallen beams. The rain beat steadily against the roof, and the smoke rose sluggishly through the cracks. Thoros knelt by the flames, warming his hands. "This place remembers death," he said softly. "Then it will not mind another guest," Lem muttered. Ongai was stripping his bowstring, oiling it carefully. "I'll take the wall watch. Can't say I like the smell of this place." "Smells like every place these days," Lem replied. "Smoke, blood, and ghosts." Beric stood apart from them, near the great doorway. He stared out into the rain, his mind adrift in memory. For a moment, he thought he saw the courtyard as it had once been, bright banners snapping in the wind, laughter from the stables, the ring of practice swords. He could almost hear it, like an echo from another life. Then the sound faded, and he was alone again with the rain. Thoros came to stand beside him. "You dream waking now, don't you?" Beric turned his head slightly. If this is dreaming, I would rather not wake." "You've lost more than you know," said the priest. "Each time I call you back, I see it in your eyes. The fire burns your body, but it also burns the man you were. Soon, there will be nothing left to bring back." Beric looked into the flames that flickered through the open doorway. "Then let that be the Lord's will. Until that day, there is work yet undone." Thoros sighed. "And what work is that?" "Justice," Beric said simply, "for those who cannot ask for it themselves." Before the priest could answer, a shout came from the wall. Ongui's voice, sharp with alarm. "Riders! Coming from the west!" The Brotherhood seized their weapons, rushing to the courtyard. Through the curtain of rain, torchlight flickered. 2 riders moving slowly through the mud. Their armor bore no sigil, but their discipline marked them as soldiers. Lem peered through the gloom. "Another ambush? Too small," Ongai said. "Looks like they've had worse than us." The riders halted before the gate. Their leader raised a hand. A woman's voice called out, cold but clear. "We seek the one they call the Lightning Lord." Beric stepped forward into the rain, his cloak clinging to his shoulders. "You've found him," he said. The woman dismounted. She was tall, armored in dull steel, her hair dark beneath her helm. When she pushed back the visor, Thoros drew a sharp breath. "Lady Brienne of Tarth," he murmured. Beric frowned. "I know the name." She bowed her head slightly. "I come seeking the Brotherhood's aid and answers. I serve the Stark girl, Arya, once in your keeping." At that, the men stirred. Lem's mouth twisted. "The Wolf girl's long gone. We lost her months past." Brienne's blue eyes did not waver. "Then I have come too late." "What would you have of us, my lady?" Beric asked. She hesitated before answering. "There is word of a figure wandering these woods, a woman with a scarred face, cloaked in gray, leading men who kill in the name of vengeance. Some call her Stoneheart." A silence fell like a blow. Beric's hand tightened on his sword hilt. "That name means nothing to me." "Then perhaps it should," Brienne said. "They say she bears the face of Lady Catelyn Stark." The hall seemed to grow colder. Thoros crossed himself in the fashion of his foreign faith. "Catelyn Stark was slain at the Twins," he said quietly. "Her body thrown into the river. No man could survive that." "No man," said Brienne, "but she was found days later. Found and brought back." Beric felt the world tilt beneath him. Brought back? The knight's gaze did not falter. "By fire, they say. By the same fire that burns in you." The rain filled the silence between them. Beric turned away, staring into the dark beyond the gate. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "Where?" "North of the Trident, near the ruins of Fairmarket." Beric nodded once. "Then that is where our road leads." Lem stared at him. "We're chasing ghosts now." Beric's burned face turned toward him. "We are all ghosts, Lem. Some of us just haven't learned it yet." He looked back to Brienne. "If what you say is true, then she must be found, before vengeance becomes something worse." Brienne inclined her head. "Then I ride with you." Thoros touched Beric's arm, voice low. "You cannot mean to meet her. If this is truth, if she has been raised as you have, then she deserves to know what that means," Beric said, "and perhaps I to understand it." That night, they rode north again, through forests, black with rain and fog. The lightning rolled far to the east, and with every flash the sky seemed to burn. Beric rode at the head, his mind a storm of memory and foreboding. Behind him, the Brotherhood followed, weary but resolute. The world had turned cold, but still the fire within him would not die. He wondered if, when they found this Lady Stoneheart, he would see in her the reflection of his own curse, or the end of it. And as the night deepened, the rain began to fall harder, washing the world to shadow. Only the faint red glow of Beric's sword marked their passage, flickering like a dying star beneath the endless gray. The storm that followed them north was like none they had ever seen. The sky split with thunder night after night, lightning lacing the clouds like veins of fire. The air was thick with the scent of rain and decay, and every step of their horses sank deep into the sodden earth. The riverlands lay broken and drowned beneath that endless deluge. Farms burned to husks, keeps fallen to ruin, bridges washed away. The war had ended, but peace had never come. They passed villages where no smoke rose from the chimneys, only crows circling above the fields. The small folk hid in the woods like hunted animals, their eyes hollow and fearful. Even the Brotherhood's name no longer brought hope. Some fled at the sight of Beric's scarred face, whispering that the Lightning Lord was no man at all, but a ghost wearing a corpse's shell. Beric rode on in silence. The words did not wound him. There was little left in him that could feel such things. His thoughts were fixed upon one name, Stoneheart. Brienne of Tarth rode beside him, her great destrier plowing through the mud with heavy steps. The woman's armor was battered and dull, her blue cloak stained with ash and travel dust. Yet there was a steadfastness about her, a quiet fire that even the rain could not quench. She did not speak often, but when she did, her words carried the weight of truth. They crossed the fords of the Trident 3 days later, and the land beyond was worse still, a wilderness of dead trees and swollen rivers, the roads half-eaten by weeds. Once, this had been a place of banners and trumpets, the heart of the realm's war. Now it was a graveyard. At the ruins of Fairmarket, they found only silence. The town lay drowned in mud and ash, its walls blackened, its streets strewn with bones. A half-collapsed sept leaned against the riverbank like a dying man. "This is where they said she was seen," Brienne said. Her voice was low. "The ones I questioned spoke of her followers, men in rags with rope scars round their necks. They hang those they judge guilty, all in her name." Beric dismounted. The ground was soft beneath his boots. "The dead have learned justice," he murmured, "and she calls herself Stoneheart." Lem spat into the mud. "If she's the one we once served, she's not the same woman now. I've no wish to meet her justice." Thoros drew his cloak tighter, peering toward the ruins. "What you're seeking may not be a woman at all, but what remains of one." Beric said nothing. He walked toward the sept, its doors long gone, the stone walls carved with the marks of swords. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The altar had been shattered, and the 7-pointed star on the floor was stained dark with old blood. In the shadows near the far wall hung a rope, and beneath it a man's body, swaying gently in the draft. His face was pale and bloated, his tongue black between his teeth. A wooden placard hung about his neck. "Thief and traitor," it read. Brienne's jaw tightened. "Gods have mercy." Beric looked up at the corpse. "The gods have no place here." As they turned to leave, a voice came from the doorway. "No gods," it said, "only the judgments of the living and the dead." The Brotherhood spun as one. A figure stood framed in the gray light, tall, cloaked in tattered gray and brown, her hood drawn low. Around her moved a handful of men, faces hidden by scarves and masks. "Who speaks?" Beric asked. The woman stepped forward. Her movements were slow, stiff, as if the bones within her resisted their purpose. When she drew back the hood, the men behind Beric crossed themselves and muttered oaths. Her face was a ruin, pale as wax, the flesh puckered and scarred, her throat a jagged line of old death. Yet the eyes that burned above that scar were unmistakable. Lady Catelyn Stark had come back from the river, but not as she once was. Brienne took a half-step forward, her sword arm trembling. "My lady, by all the gods it cannot be." Stoneheart said nothing. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She raised one hand, and a man stepped from behind her. Tall, bearded, with a rope scar about his neck. "She says she knows you," the man said roughly. "She knows your face, Lightning Lord." Beric bowed his head. "If she is who I think, then she once knew my name." "She knows it still," the man said. "She knows what you are and what you've done." Beric met those lifeless eyes. "Then let her speak her judgment." Stoneheart's mouth twisted, a breath rasping through her ruined throat. The sound was not speech, but the effort of something that had forgotten how to be human. She gestured sharply. The men behind her moved at once. In moments, Beric and his followers were surrounded. Blades glinted in the gloom, crossbows leveled. Lem growled, his hand going to his sword. "So this is her justice." "Hold," Beric said quietly. "No more blood for the river." He stepped forward, unarmed, until he stood before her. "If vengeance is what you seek, you will find no lack of it in this land. But if it is justice you crave, then tell me what wrong we've done you." Stoneheart raised her hand again, and the bearded man spoke for her. "You let her son die. You let the wolves fall. You let the realm burn." Beric's gaze did not waver. "I fought for him until I died, and again after. What more would you have of me?" Another rasping breath escaped her, low and harsh. Her hand dropped, and the man's voice came again. "Your life," she says, "for hers." Thoros cried out, "No! He serves the same fire that brought her back." But Beric only nodded. "Then perhaps that fire will take what it is owed." He turned to the priest, his voice calm. "You've brought me back too many times, Thoros. I think the Lord of Light will forgive you if you let me go." Thoros shook his head in disbelief. "Beric, do it," Beric said softly. "She deserves peace, if any soul does." He turned back to Stoneheart and met her empty gaze. "Lady Catelyn Stark, I name you true-born of Winterfell. If you will it, take my flame." Her ruined lips parted in something that might have been a gasp or a sob. Then she nodded once. Beric knelt before her. The rain outside drummed on the broken roof, steady as a heartbeat. Thoros stepped forward, trembling. His lips moved in prayer, the words old and heavy. Fire blossomed between his hands, faint, uncertain, and then leapt bright as the dawn. He pressed it to Beric's brow. The smell of smoke filled the hall. Beric's body shuddered once, and the flame passed from him like breath. Thoros fell back, weeping. When the light faded, Beric Dondarrion lay still, his face calm for the first time in years. Beside him, Lady Stoneheart drew a long, shaking breath, the first true breath she had taken since her death beneath the twins. Her followers fell to their knees. The fire on the altar burned higher, bright and red as blood. Outside, thunder rolled over the river, and the rain ceased at last. The Lightning Lord was gone, but his flame, his justice, his unyielding fire lived on in the heart of the woman who had forgotten how to weep. The dawn after Beric Dondarrion's last death came quietly, as though the very sky mourned. No birds sang. The ruins of Fairmarket lay shrouded in mist, the river whispering faintly beyond the walls. Within the broken sept, a single fire still burned, low and red. The Brotherhood without banners stood around the body of their fallen lord. None spoke. Thoros of Myr knelt beside him, hands resting upon his knees, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. His lips moved without sound. No prayer now, no words to the Lord of Light, only the silent echo of despair. Beric's body lay as it had fallen, head bowed, sword upon his breast. The scar across his cheek had softened in death, his burned flesh smoothed by the light of the dying fire. For the first time in years, there was peace in his face. Lady Stoneheart stood opposite, her gray cloak dark with rain. She did not speak. She could not. But her gaze lingered upon the corpse before her. There was something human there, buried deep beneath the ruin and the rage, something that remembered sorrow. The men who followed her shifted uneasily. They had seen her hang nobles and peasants alike, heard her issue judgment in whispers rasped through her torn throat. Yet before this man, she was still. Thoros rose slowly, his knees stiff. "He gave you his life," he said hoarsely, "freely. You have his fire now, his strength, but not his soul. That was his own, and it is gone where no god's light can reach." Stoneheart's ruined lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she turned and walked toward the shattered doorway. Her followers moved to go with her, but she lifted one hand, a command to wait. She stepped into the mist alone. Outside, the dawn wind stirred her cloak. For a long moment she stood motionless, staring toward the river that had once been her grave. Then, slowly, she raised her hand to her throat. Beneath the scars, something glimmered, a faint red glow, like the ember of a buried flame. When she turned back, her eyes burned with that same light. Within the sept, Thoros gathered the Brotherhood. "He would have wanted no tomb, no cairn," he said. "The Lightning Lord belongs to the land he fought for." They buried him at the foot of an old weirwood near the riverbank, its roots half exposed by the flood. The red leaves hung low, dripping with morning rain. Lem drove the first spade of earth. Angi followed, and the rest took their turns. None spoke until the grave was full. Thoros stood last, clutching Beric's sword. The blade was black now, its fire spent. He planted it upright in the soil, the hilt catching the pale light of dawn. "May the Lord of Light remember his name," he said softly, "for I fear the world already has." When the men turned away, Thoros lingered, his hand resting upon the hilt. For years he had been a drunkard, a fool in red robes. Then Beric had died, and lived again, and everything had changed. The miracles had made him believe once more. But now, with Beric gone, he wondered if belief itself was the cruelest jest of all. He looked to the east, where the mist burned away above the river. "You gave her your fire," he whispered. "But what if her heart is too cold to hold it?" By nightfall, the Brotherhood was gone. Only Thoros remained, his campfire a lonely spark beside the weirwood. He had meant to follow, to lead the others as Beric once had, but the strength to move would not come. As darkness deepened, he drank from his wineskin, though the wine had lost its comfort. The forest was still save for the soft rustle of leaves. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. Then came the footsteps. Thoros rose, hand upon his dagger. "Who goes there?" From the shadows stepped a man, tall, cloaked, his face hidden beneath a hood. He moved with a limp, his armor stained and torn. When he lifted his head, the firelight caught his features, and Thoros staggered back. It was Beric. No, not Beric. The face was his, but wrong, the flesh pale as wax, the eyes dull, lifeless. He moved stiffly, like a puppet pulled by unseen strings. "Lord of Light, preserve me," Thoros whispered. "What are you?" The thing that wore Beric's face smiled faintly. "I am what remains. You gave her my fire, priest, but fire spreads. It does not die." Thoros shook his head, trembling. "Beric is gone. I saw him die. I felt his soul leave." "Souls burn too," said the shadow of Beric, "and sometimes the ash remembers." He stepped closer, the light painting hollows beneath his eyes. "She called to me, in the dark, by the river. Your flame woke her, and she woke me. We are bound now, by fire and by vengeance." Thoros felt the blood drain from his face. "What do you mean?" "You will see," the ghost said softly, "when she calls for you, when her justice reaches the end of its rope." He reached toward the sword in the earth. The fire within the steel flickered once, faintly, as if in recognition. Then, before Thoros could speak, the figure was gone, swallowed by mist and shadow. The priest sank to his knees. "R'hllor, protect us," he murmured. But the night gave no answer. Days passed. Rumors spread through the riverlands once more, of a woman who wore a noose about her throat, who hanged Freys and Lannisters and every man who had ever bent the knee to them. They said she knew every guilty heart by sight, that her eyes burned red as embers, and sometimes beside her they saw another. A tall man cloaked in black, his face burned and broken, his sword dark as night. They rode together, it was said, through villages that had forgotten hope, leaving corpses swinging from the trees. Thoros heard the tales as he wandered, and each one struck him like a blow. He began to dream of Beric again, not as he had been, but as something twisted by the fire he had once wielded. In those dreams, Beric spoke. "You gave her life," the voice said. "Now she gives death. You prayed for light," it whispered, "and I gave you shadow." Each time Thoros woke drenched in sweat, the echo of thunder in his ears. Winter crept slowly down from the north. The days shortened, the rivers froze. The Brotherhood scattered, hunted, broken. And still, from the black woods and hollow valleys, came whispers of the Lady in Grey and her silent night. Some called her a spirit of vengeance. Others said she was the doom made flesh. Only Thoros knew the truth, or enough of it to wish he did not. One night, as snow fell upon the trident, he came again to the grave beneath the weirwood. The sword was gone. Only a faint scorch mark remained where it had stood. He sank to his knees in the snow. "If your fire still burns," he said to the wind, "then may it guide her toward mercy, for if it burns only for vengeance—" He bowed his head. "Then gods help us all." The wind sighed through the red leaves. For a moment, Thoros thought he saw movement there, the faint shimmer of flame beneath the bark, like the pulse of a buried heart. But when he blinked, it was gone, and the forest was silent once more. Far to the north, beneath the pale light of a half-hidden moon, two riders moved through the snow, a woman with a scarred face and a man cloaked in shadow. Between them burned a faint, unearthly fire, small yet unyielding, flickering like the last hope of a dying world. Snow fell upon the riverlands, soft, silent, relentless. It blanketed the dead fields and broken towers, wrapped the blackened trees in white, and dulled the sound of the wind until the world itself seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in many years, fire and steel were quiet. But in the quiet, darker things stirred. The people whispered of the hanged queen, the Lady of Vengeance, the Mother of No Mercy. They spoke her name only in secret, Stoneheart. She had become the shadow of judgment upon the realm, a revenant of the Red Wedding, hanging her foes from the limbs of trees and bridges alike. And beside her, they said, rode a man whose face was half burned, whose eye burned with fire, while the other was dead and pale. He carried a black sword, unlit but dangerous still, and where he walked, justice and death were the same. Beric Dondarrion had once been a man of mercy, but the mercy had died with him. It began in the ruins of Derry, where the Freys had garrisoned themselves after the war. The snow lay thick on the old stones, muffling the sounds of men within. They laughed and drank around their fires, their red and blue banners sagging under frost. That laughter died before dawn. A sentry on the gatehouse saw a flicker of red light beyond the trees. Torchlight, he thought, though the snow fell heavy. When he leaned closer, an arrow struck him clean through the throat. By the time he hit the ground, the torches had multiplied. 12, then 20. They came without banners, without cries, their faces half hidden beneath hoods and scarves. The Freys tried to form ranks, but confusion spread faster than courage. The gate burst open with a sound like thunder, and the first wave poured in. At their head rode a woman in gray, her hair a tangle of pale strings, her eyes burning dull red. Her throat bore the mark of the rope, and her mouth moved without sound. Stoneheart. Behind her came the Lightning Lord reborn, Beric, or the thing that wore his form. His sword was black, but as he swung it, the snow itself seemed to hiss. His voice carried through the storm, cold and steady. "No more mercy," he said. "No more lies." The slaughter was swift. The Freys tried to flee, but every path led to the hangman's rope. When dawn broke over Derry's towers, the courtyard was lined with bodies, frozen where they swung, their tongues black with frost. Stoneheart stood beneath them, her head tilted as if in judgment. The cold wind tugged at her cloak, and for an instant, a faint ember glowed at her throat. Beric's gift, burning low but steady. Beric stood beside her, his breath a mist in the dawn. He no longer felt the cold. He no longer felt much of anything. Yet somewhere within the shell of his chest, something stirred. Not warmth, but memory. He looked upon the bodies and felt the faintest echo of shame. "Is this justice?" he murmured. Stoneheart turned her ruined face toward him. Her mouth opened, a sound rasping like dead leaves. The man who spoke for her stepped forward, his voice low and rough. "She says justice died at the Twins. What remains is only balance." Beric's hand clenched around his sword. "And when the scales are even, she says they never will be." The Brotherhood, what was left of it, followed them from ruin to ruin, their numbers growing with every soul who had lost something to the war. Farmers, deserters, widows. They did not speak of honor or oaths anymore, only of vengeance. Thoros of Myr heard of it from the lips of the dying. He had left the riverlands behind, wandering south, his faith in tatters. But no man could escape the reach of fire. The tales found him in every tavern and septry, in every broken hall. One night, in an abandoned inn by the crossroads, he heard hoofbeats outside. When he looked up, the door swung open, and a woman entered, her cloak heavy with snow. She was young, no more than 20, but her eyes were hollow. She knelt before the hearth. "Are you the Red Priest?" "I was," Thoros said wearily. She nodded once. "Then you must see her." They rode together through the snow for 2 days. Thoros had not wanted to go, yet something stronger than will drove him. Guilt, perhaps, or the echo of Beric's voice. When at last they reached the woods near Oldstones, he saw the fires, dozens of them, scattered among the trees, burning red against the snow. Men moved between them like shadows. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of death. At the heart of it all stood a great oak, ancient and twisted. Beneath its limbs hung 5 men, knights by their armor, though stripped of sigils. Beneath them stood Stoneheart. She turned as Thoros approached. Her followers parted silently, making way. The Red Priest felt his knees weaken as he met her gaze. "My lady," he whispered. "Do you know me?" Her lips moved, the sound scraping harsh and broken. One of her men, the same bearded spokesman as before, translated. "She says she remembers. You gave her the fire." Thoros shook his head. "Not I. Beric. He gave you his life. She says he rides with her still." The priest's heart clenched. "Then let me see him." At that, a shadow detached itself from the trees, a tall figure cloaked in black. His face was half hidden, but Thoros knew it at once. "Beric," he said. The figure inclined its head. "That name is gone." "You are not him," Thoros whispered. "No," said the thing that had been Beric Dondarrion, "but I remember his sins." Thoros's voice trembled. "You remember his mercy too. You must." Beric's head turned slightly toward Stoneheart. "Mercy is a luxury for the living." Thoros took a step forward, desperation breaking through his fear. "This path leads only to darkness. I've seen the light of the Lord. It burns all it touches. It will burn you too." Beric's answer was a whisper of steel. "Then let it." Stoneheart's hand rose. At her signal, the hanged knights swung higher, their lifeless boots scraping the bark. The snow fell thick and white around them. Thoros bowed his head. "If there is still a spark of the man I knew," he said softly, "then remember this. Fire is meant to warm, not consume." No answer came, only the creak of rope in the wind. When he turned to leave, Beric spoke once more. "The world is ash, priest. Warmth died with mercy." That night, Thoros fled into the woods. He did not stop until dawn, and when he did, he fell to his knees in the snow, whispering the old prayers. But no fire came. The Lord of Light was silent. He rose, weary and alone, and began walking south again. Behind him, faint on the wind, came the sound of creaking wood, as though the forest itself were filled with ghosts swinging from its branches. And in the far distance, where the snow met the horizon, a single light glimmered red in the dark, the last ember of Beric Dondarrion's flame, carried by a woman whose heart no longer beat. The storm swallowed it soon after, and the world returned to silence. Winter had swallowed the riverlands whole. The trees stood like gaunt sentinels beneath cloaks of snow, and the rivers had frozen over, pale as glass. Where once the trident had flowed red with the blood of kings, now it lay silent, entombed beneath a shroud of ice. Only the wind moved, whispering through the broken keeps and dead fields. In that still and frozen land, 2 shadows rode together. A woman in tattered gray, her face pale and ruined, and beside her a tall man cloaked in black, his features half burned, half frozen. They did not speak, nor need to. The bond between them was older than words, forged in fire and sealed in death. The Lady Stoneheart and the Lord who would not die. Where they passed, the living hid their faces and whispered prayers. The guilty did not sleep. The noose had become their herald, the tree their gallows, the cold their judge. Each village they came upon bore the marks of the war. Corpses buried shallow, hearths long cold, the scent of fear clinging to the walls like smoke. But to Stoneheart, these were not the ruins of peace. They were the battlefield of her endless war. Beric, or what remained of him, followed without question. The fire within his chest burned faintly now, a slow, pulsing ember. He no longer felt hunger or warmth. He remembered the taste of bread, the sound of laughter, the sunlight on the stones of Blackhaven. But they were phantoms, slipping further from his reach with each passing moon. He told himself that he followed her to guard her from the edge of madness. Yet he knew, deep within, that she no longer needed guarding, and that he followed her because the same fire burned in them both. They came upon a village near the ruins of Pink Maiden, little more than a handful of huts clustered beside a frozen brook. The people had hidden at their approach, leaving behind doors ajar and fires half dead. The snow was trampled with prints, not villagers, but soldiers. Beric crouched beside a discarded helm, brushing the frost away. A stag stamped in gold glimmered faintly upon the steel. Stormland's men, he murmured. Baratheon's colors. Stoneheart's eyes flicked toward the trees. She lifted her hand, and the followers who trailed them melted into the shadows, spreading through the village like smoke. Moments later, a cry rang out from one of the huts. Beric drew his sword, black as the void now, the fire long gone, and strode toward the sound. Inside, 3 men in mail huddled near a dying fire, their faces gaunt, their armor unkempt. One of them was bound, a villager, by his dress. "Soldiers," Beric said, stepping into the light. "You wear a lord's sigil, yet you prey upon his people." The nearest man rose, reaching for his sword. "And who are you to judge us, half dead? The war's done, the realm's fallen. We take what's left." Beric moved faster than the man could blink. His blade caught the firelight. For the briefest instant, it flared red, like the ghost of flame. The soldier's sword clattered to the ground. He fell beside it, throat open to the bone. The others froze. Beric turned his single eye upon them. "Flee, if you value your breath." They did. Stoneheart entered as they vanished into the snow. She looked upon the body, and then upon the freed villager. Her mouth moved, the ruined voice whispering through the air. "She asks what they took," her spokesman said. "Everything," the man sobbed. "They came 3 days past, said they fought for the stag, but they took our stores, our women." Stoneheart's hand lifted again. "Enough," the spokesman murmured. "She knows." She turned toward Beric, her gaze sharp as ice. Her fingers brushed her throat, and a faint glow pulsed there, dim and red. Beric understood. "Another hanging," he said. The villagers gathered in silence as the soldiers' bodies swayed from the trees. Snow fell upon their faces, soft and cold, while Stoneheart watched without blinking. The wind tugged at her cloak, and for a heartbeat, Beric saw her as she had once been. Catelyn Stark, the Lady of Winterfell, proud and fierce. But the illusion passed, and only the gray woman remained. He turned away before the first of the ropes snapped. That night, they camped beside the frozen brook. The followers huddled close to their fires, muttering prayers or sharpening blades. None approached their leader's tent. The lady and her lord had become more legend than flesh. Beric sat apart, staring into the fire. Its light painted his face in flickering shades of red and shadow. He felt the heat, but not the warmth. "I remember the first time Thoros called me back," he said softly, though no one was there to hear. "He said the Lord had chosen me for some purpose. Justice, perhaps, mercy. But the gods care little for mercy." The fire cracked. He thought of Thoros, the red priest who had believed even when Beric no longer could. Was he still alive, wandering somewhere to the south, or had the cold claimed him at last? The snow whispered outside the tent. A shadow moved beyond the firelight. Beric's hand found his sword, but when he looked up, it was her. Stoneheart entered without sound, the wind carrying her tattered cloak. She stood over him, eyes gleaming faintly in the dark. "You should rest," he said, though the words felt hollow. Her head tilted, her lips twitching. The rasp that came from her throat was not speech, but something near to it. The ghost of a voice that had once been a mother's, a wife's. He did not need the spokesman this time. He understood. "Rest?" Beric said bitterly. "For us, there is no rest." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his chest, where the faint glow still pulsed beneath the scar. He felt it then, the fire within her, mingled with his own, a shared curse. But beneath the flame was something colder, a void that whispered endlessly of vengeance and loss. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw tears in her eyes. Then she turned and was gone, leaving only the whisper of her passing. The days grew shorter, the nights longer. The Brotherhood's hunts became ritual, noose, fire, silence. The land itself seemed to recoil from them. And then, one morning, as they rode through a valley of white trees, they came upon a frozen river where the ice was black. In its center lay a single figure, face down in the snow, a man in red robes, Thoros of Myr. Beric dismounted at once. The priest's beard was rimed with frost, his lips blue. Yet when Beric knelt beside him, he felt the faintest warmth, not life, but something near it. He lifted Thoros gently. The old man's eyes fluttered open. "Beric." "I am here," Beric said. Thoros's gaze wandered, unfocused. "So it's true. You walk still. And she lives," Beric said, "if such a thing can be called life." A tear froze upon the priest's cheek. "Then the fire has failed us both." "No," Beric said quietly. "It has done its work." He looked toward Stoneheart, who stood upon the bank, her gray cloak billowing in the wind. The snow fell around her like ashes. "The fire does not care for gods or men," Beric said. "It only burns. What we do with it, that is our sin, or our salvation." Thoros smiled faintly, his breath misting in the cold. "Then pray. It finds mercy yet." His hand slipped from Beric's, and his eyes closed. Beric laid him upon the ice, folding his hands over his chest. The wind keened through the valley, carrying the faint echo of bells, or perhaps the creak of 1,000 ropes swaying in the frozen woods. He rose, feeling the last warmth fade from his body. The fire within him dimmed, steady and cold as a dying star. Above them, the sky cracked with thunder, though no storm followed. Beric turned to Stoneheart. "There is no end," he said. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, she nodded, slowly, as if in answer. Together, they rode on into the snow. The snows deepened as the year waned. Days dwindled into twilight, and the nights seemed endless. The riverlands lay hushed beneath a shroud of white, its rivers sealed with ice, its forests muffled by frost. No rider's horn nor battle cry echoed now, only the sighing of wind through leafless branches, and through that cold, silent realm moved the ghosts of fire and vengeance. The Lady Stoneheart rode before them, her cloak gray as the storm clouds, her hair stiff with ice. Beneath her hood, her face was a ruin of pale scars, her lips blue, her throat an old wound that had never healed. Her eyes burned faintly red, the last warmth left in her. At her side rode the man once called Beric Dondarrion, Lord of Blackhaven, now little more than a shadow wrapped in flesh. His sword no longer flamed, yet it gleamed black and cold in his hand, and wherever he passed, the air smelled faintly of ash. They had become the living memory of the war. Vengeance and duty made flesh. The brotherhood that followed them was a far cry from the merry band that had once ridden laughing beneath summer trees. Now they were fewer, hardened by hunger and guilt, their laughter long forgotten. They wore no colors save gray and black, no sigils save the noose. They moved from village to village, and wherever they went, they left judgment in their wake. The guilty they hanged, the innocent they left trembling, uncertain if they had been spared or merely postponed. Yet even vengeance grows weary with time. When the snows came heavy, they sought shelter in an abandoned holdfast near the banks of the Blackwater Rush, a place once belonging to House Mooton, its towers half collapsed, its halls roofless. There they built fires of scavenged timber and waited out the storm. Beric stood at the ruined gatehouse, watching the snow drift through the broken arch. His mind wandered to another winter long ago, when he had sat by a roaring hearth in Blackhaven's great hall, a cup of mulled wine in hand, his betrothed laughing beside him. He tried to recall her face, her voice, but the memory slipped away like smoke. What remained was only the ache of loss. He turned when he heard the rasp of breath behind him. Stoneheart stood in the doorway, her cloak heavy with snow. Her eyes flickered toward him, glowing faintly in the dusk. "You shouldn't be out in the cold," he said, though he knew she did not feel it. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. She raised a hand, pointed toward the horizon. Through the curtain of snow, faint lights glimmered, torches, far off, moving slowly. "Riders," Beric murmured. "Who would ride in weather such as this?" He called to the men below. Within moments, the Brotherhood roused, dragging on cloaks and helms. By the time the torches drew near, bows were strung, blades unsheathed. The riders came single file through the snow, 20 perhaps, cloaked and hooded, their horses gaunt and weary. At their head rode a knight in rusted armor, a tattered banner trailing behind him, a black stag upon yellow. Baratheon's colors. Beric stepped forward, sword drawn. "Halt!" The knight raised a gloved hand. "We mean no harm." His voice was hoarse, weary. "We seek shelter and parley." "Parley?" Beric's single eye gleamed. What parley can there be between the dead and the dying? The knight pushed back his hood, revealing a face Beric half remembered, scarred, older than it should have been, yet familiar. "Sir Harbert Storm," Beric said slowly, "of Griffin's Roost." "Aye," the man replied. "Once that was true. Now I am merely a sword without a cause." Beric lowered his blade, though only slightly. "And what brings a bastard of Storm's End into these haunted woods?" "War," Harbert said simply, "or what remains of it. Stannis is gone. The north burns. The lions still rule from their rock, but their claws are dull. I come seeking the one they call Stoneheart, the Lady of Vengeance." Beric's hand tightened on the hilt. "And if you found her?" Harbert's gaze shifted toward the shadowed figure behind Beric. He bowed his head. "Then I ask her judgment. I was at the Twins." A murmur rippled through the Brotherhood. Stoneheart stepped forward, her cloak brushing the snow. The man sank to his knees. "I rode with Lord Frey. I saw what was done. I did nothing to stop it." His voice cracked. "I have lived with that shame since. End it." Stoneheart's head tilted, her ruined throat rasping faintly. The spokesman beside her, a gaunt man with rope scars at his neck, spoke for her. "She asks why you come to her now." "Because the world is dying," Harbert said, "and I would meet death with truth upon my tongue." Beric watched silently. The woman beside him, who had once been Catelyn Stark, stared down at the kneeling knight. Then she raised her hand. 2 men seized Harbert by the arms. He did not resist. A rope was thrown over a low branch of the broken gatehouse. As they slipped the noose about his neck, he looked once more at Beric. "Is there nothing left of the man you were?" Beric met his gaze. "There is nothing left of any man here." The rope tightened, the body swung. When it was done, Stoneheart turned away. The followers dispersed without a word. The storm howled around them, swallowing sound and sight. Beric lingered by the gate, watching the body twist slowly in the wind. For a long while, he said nothing. Thoris's words echoed in his mind. Fire is meant to warm, not consume. Yet all he felt was cold. That night, he dreamed. He was back in the hollow hill, the firelight flickering across stone and shadow. Around him sat faces long gone: Thoros, Tom Sevenstreams, Angai the Archer, even young Ned Dane. They were laughing, passing bread and wine, their voices full of life. Then the laughter turned to whispers. The faces melted away, leaving only ash. From the darkness stepped Stoneheart, her eyes burning like coals. "You gave me your flame," she said. And in the dream, her voice was whole again, the voice of Catelyn Stark. "Now, burn with me." She reached for him, and fire poured from her hands. He felt it sear through him, devouring everything he had been. Yet beneath the agony was a strange, fleeting peace, the peace of surrender. When he woke, the fire in his chest was brighter than it had been in years. The Brotherhood stirred around the dying embers, but he did not join them. He only stared at the glow beneath his skin and wondered if it was life or damnation that flickered there. By dawn, the storm had passed. The sky was pale and clear, the snow glittering beneath the rising sun. Stoneheart rode out before the others, her followers trailing like shadows. Beric lingered one last time beside the gatehouse. The corpse of Sir Harbert swung stiff in the morning light. "You found your truth," he murmured. "May it grant you peace." He turned his horse and followed the Grey Lady into the cold, their shadows long upon the snow. Behind them, the wind rose, and the rope creaked softly, as if the dead still whispered to the living. And though the sun climbed higher, its warmth did not reach them, for fire and frost had become the same. The world lay locked in frost. The trident's branches were sheathed in ice, the trees white to their highest limbs, and the breath of men hung in the air like ghosts. Crows perched silent upon the bones of gallows trees, too full from the harvest of death to cry. And yet, even in that bleakness, the fire moved, small, dim, and unyielding. Stoneheart led what remained of the Brotherhood eastward, following no road, but vengeance. The river had frozen hard enough for horses, and they crossed it in single file, the ice groaning beneath their weight. Beyond the far bank rose a forest of dark pines, ancient and still, untouched by war. There they found shelter in the ruins of a hunting lodge, half swallowed by snow. Beric Dondarrion rode at her side, his cloak stiff with frost. His face was pale as bone, his eye dull, yet deep in his chest something glimmered faintly. The memory of flame. The others feared him now as they feared her, not for cruelty, but for the stillness that clung to him, the quiet of one who had looked upon death too often to dread it. That night, while the others huddled close to their fires, Beric stood watch beneath the stars. They burned sharp and cold above the treetops, reflecting on the snow like shards of glass. He thought of the countless nights he had watched the same sky, as a boy, as a lord, as a ghost. The stars had not changed, only he had. Footsteps whispered behind him. Stoneheart approached, her cloak dragging through the snow. She did not make a sound save for the faint creak of leather, yet he felt her presence like the chill of a blade. When she came to stand beside him, she lifted her gaze to the stars as well. He broke the silence first. "Do you ever wonder," he said, his voice a rasp, "if the gods look down and see what we've become?" She did not answer, only watched the heavens with those burning eyes. "I have forgotten my prayers," Beric said, "forgotten even the words. Thoros said that fire was the Lord's gift, but I think now it was only a mirror. What we are, it shows us. Justice or vengeance, mercy or wrath, the fire burns them all the same." Her head turned slightly toward him. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw something human in her eyes. Weariness, perhaps, or understanding. Then she raised a hand, touched the scar upon her throat, and turned away. By dawn, they rode again. Their path took them toward the mountains of the moon, where the snows grew deeper, and the wind howled through the passes like a living thing. There, rumor had reached them of a Lannister host marching home from the Vale, remnants of the war, laden with plunder, their commander a knight who had once fought beneath Tywin's banner at the Green Fork. Stoneheart's followers whispered eagerly of ambush, of vengeance, of gold to feed the starving. Beric said nothing. When they came upon the column 3 days later, it was camped in a narrow gorge, the fires bright against the snow. The soldiers wore lion cloaks still, though their armor was dented and their faces hollow with hunger. Beric watched them from the ridge above, his horse stamping beneath him. "They've lost their war," he murmured. "Let them go." But Stoneheart's eyes gleamed red beneath her hood. She raised her hand. The attack came with the swiftness of lightning. Arrows hissed from the cliffs, torches fell among the tents, and the gorge erupted into chaos. The Lannisters scrambled for their weapons, but half their horses fled before they could mount. Beric rode at the front, his sword a black streak in the firelight. The fight was short, brutal. By the time the sun climbed above the mountains, the snow was red, and the gorge lay silent save for the crackle of burning canvas. Stoneheart stood among the dead, her cloak spattered with blood, her gaze fixed upon a single captive, a knight in gilded armor, his helm dented, his beard crusted with frost. He had been dragged before her, forced to his knees. "I am Sir Willem Fenn," he said hoarsely, "sworn to Lord Tywin once, aye, but I broke no oaths. I fought where I was commanded." The gray woman tilted her head. Her mouth moved soundlessly, her ruined throat rasping like dry leaves. Her spokesman stepped forward. "She says you fought beneath the lion's banner. That is enough." Beric's hand went to her arm. "He is beaten. The war is done. This serves nothing now." The spokesman hesitated, then looked to her. Stoneheart's stare never wavered. Beric stepped between them. "Lady Catelyn," he said, her name, her true name. "You once believed in honor, in justice. I saw it in you, even after death. Have you forgotten what your son fought for?" For a long moment, she was still. The firelight flickered across her face, showing the ruin, the rope mark, the pale lips that trembled faintly. Then she raised her hand again. The rope was brought. Beric's voice broke through the wind. "Enough!" Every eye turned to him. He drew his sword. It did not flame, but the edge caught the red of the fires and shone darkly. "No more hangings," he said. "No more ghosts. If justice is to live, then mercy must breathe beside it." Her gaze met his, cold and burning both. Her mouth opened, and a low hiss came, not speech, but fury given sound. "You would defy her?" the spokesman demanded. Beric took a step forward. I would remind her what she was. The followers hesitated, torn between fear and faith. Stoneheart raised both hands then, shaking, trembling with rage. The faint glow at her throat flared. Beric's fire, his last gift. It burned bright, red as dawn. The air shimmered. He felt it. The pull between them, fire to fire, life to death. Her flame and his, bound by Thoris's prayer, by his sacrifice. For an instant, they were one again, and in her face he saw not fury, but anguish, not vengeance, but grief. He reached for her. "Let it end," he whispered. "Let us rest." The light between them flared blinding white. The wind howled, the snow lifted, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to vanish into fire. When the glare faded, Beric was gone. Only his sword remained, driven into the earth, its edge glowing faintly red. Stoneheart staggered, clutching her throat. The light within her dimmed, then steadied. She sank to her knees beside the weapon, her breath rasping in the stillness. No one spoke. The spokesman stepped forward uncertainly. "My lady?" She lifted her head. Her eyes burned brighter than ever, but tears traced her scarred cheeks, tears that froze before they fell. She rose slowly, took the sword in her hands, and turned away. The body of Sir Willem Fenn was forgotten. When dawn broke, the gorge lay quiet again. Smoke drifted toward a pale sky, and the snow had covered the blood. Stoneheart rode out before the others, Beric's sword across her saddle. Behind her, the Brotherhood followed, fewer now and silent. None dared speak her name. The fire that had bound them still burned, but its light had changed. It no longer sought vengeance alone. Beneath the ice and ashes, something new had stirred. Fragile, fleeting, but real. Far behind, in the wind that swept through the mountains, the faint echo of a man's voice seemed to whisper once more. Mercy is not weakness. It is the last fire of the living. Stoneheart did not look back. The storm closed around her, and the snow swallowed the tracks of her passing. But the flame endured, carried onward in her heart, a heart of stone, yet burning still. The winter deepened until the very air seemed made of glass. Snow fell ceaselessly, covering all things in silence, as though the gods themselves had cast a shroud upon the realm. Roads disappeared beneath drifts taller than men, and even the rivers forgot their songs. Only the whisper of wind through bare trees told of life still clinging to the cold earth. Through that white wilderness, the Lady Stoneheart rode alone. Her followers had dwindled, some to death, some to fear, some to the quiet madness that comes when vengeance loses its shape. The Brotherhood, without banners, was no more. Only she remained, the pale ghost of what once had been justice. Beric's sword hung at her side, its black steel streaked faintly with red as if it still remembered the flame. Often she touched it, though she no longer drew it. It was heavy with memory. Each dawn she rose before the gray light, and each night she rode until darkness devoured the land. She did not tire. Her breath misted faintly, but her heart had long ceased to beat. She was neither alive nor dead, bound to her path by the ember Beric had given her, the ember that glowed faintly at her throat. At times, she thought she heard him beside her. In the whisper of the wind, in the creak of the saddle, in the soft hiss of the snow beneath her horse's hooves, his voice would come. "There is no end to vengeance, my lady," it would murmur. "Only the fire and what it leaves behind." And she would whisper back, her ruined voice scraping like ice upon stone, "Then let it burn." When she reached the village of Pennytree, she found it buried half to the eaves in snow. The river had frozen hard, the mill wheel still and rimed with frost. Smoke rose from only 2 chimneys. Stoneheart dismounted before the inn, her boots sinking deep into the drift. The door hung from one hinge, creaking in the wind. Inside, a single fire burned, tended by a thin old man who looked up in terror at the sight of her. "My lady," he stammered, though his eyes said he saw no lady at all. "I've no coin, no meat, only barley and a bit of salt. Please." She raised a hand. He fell silent. She crossed the room without sound and stood before the hearth. The firelight danced upon her scarred face, and for a moment the old man seemed to see something human there. Sorrow, perhaps, or weariness. But it was gone as swiftly as it came. When she turned, her shadow stretched across the floor like a dark river. "Where are the Freys?" she rasped, the sound more breath than speech. The man trembled. "They rode south last moon, lady, to the twins, or what's left of them." Her eyes flickered red. The twins. Without another word, she left the inn. The man watched her vanish into the snow and thought of tales he'd heard long ago, of the Lady of the Gallows, the corpse who rode the night seeking those who had wronged her. He crossed himself and whispered a prayer, though he no longer knew which god might listen. The journey north was long. The roads vanished beneath her horse's hooves, the rivers swallowed by ice. She passed villages where only bones remained, and castles where wolves slept in the broken halls. Each night, the wind carried the same sound, the groan of ropes and the creak of swaying bodies. At last, she came to the Red Fork, where the shattered towers of the twins loomed against the pale sky. The bridge was gone, half fallen into the frozen river. The keep beyond lay dark and still. She rode through the gate unchallenged. The air stank of rot. The Freys were gone, fled south when the snows began. Only carrion birds kept watch. In the great hall she dismounted, her footsteps echoing on the stone. The long tables were overturned, the hearth cold, the banners torn. At the dais stood the remnants of a high seat, broken clean in 2. There, upon the floor, lay a rusted dagger, its hilt wrapped in crimson silk. She knelt and touched it. The silk was stiff with age, yet the blade caught what little light there was. Memory struck her like a blade of ice. She saw the hall alive again, filled with song and laughter. Saw her son Rob, tall and young, his crown upon his brow. Saw the treachery, the wine, the music that turned to screams. She saw the crossbowmen, the knives, her boy's blood upon the floor, and she remembered the last thing she had felt before the darkness took her. Not fear, but the need for justice. The ember at her throat flared, red and bright. She rose, Beric's sword in her hand. That night, a storm broke over the twins. Snow and wind howled through the ruins, and lightning lit the sky. From afar, travelers on the river road said they saw fire burning within the towers, a red glow that pulsed like the beating of a great heart. When the dawn came, the storm was gone. The keep stood silent once more, but the ice upon the river had melted, and smoke drifted faintly from the chimneys. And upon the highest tower, carved into the frost, were words that no man claimed to have written. "The debt is paid." Far away to the south, in the forests beyond the Trident, a band of outlaws found an old man sitting beside a dying fire. He wore the red robes of a priest, though they were torn and faded, and his hands shook from cold. "Are you Thoros of Myr?" they asked. "I was," the priest said softly. They told him what the travelers had seen. The fire at the twins, the melting river, the words on the tower. When they were done, Thoros bowed his head and smiled a weary smile. "Then it is finished," he murmured. The Lord's fire has gone out at last." The men left him there, muttering prayers, but when they looked back, they saw the faintest glow around the priest, a thin red light flickering like the last coal of a dying hearth. Winter wore on. The snows would not cease. The realm slumbered beneath its frozen crown. Yet sometimes, on nights when the moon was hidden and the wind blew from the north, travelers swore they saw two figures riding together along the Trident's banks, one cloaked in gray, one in black. The woman's face was pale as the snow, the man's burned and shadowed. No sound followed them but the soft hiss of hooves upon the ice and the faint crackle of unseen fire. Some said they were wraiths, bound forever to the land they had died to avenge. Others said they were justice and mercy, riding together at last. But most said nothing. They merely bowed their heads and whispered as the riders passed, their torches casting long red trails through the dark. And when the wind carried the faint scent of smoke and rain, they thought they heard a voice, distant, weary, yet peaceful, whispering through the cold. "The fire is gone, yet still it warms." Then the night would swallow all sound, and the snow would fall once more, soft and endless, upon the graves of the dead and the dreams of the living alike.